Hi, baby boomer fans. We are Jackie and Janine, the Pfeiffer sisters, and love to talk about the 1950s, inviting you to reminisce with us as we explore experiences of that decade. Grab your favorite malt or Green River. Make sure you are wide awake and get ready to be inspired about the 1950s. Welcome to the 1950s Fun Chat. Hello, friends. Thank you for joining us. We are so glad that you are here to learn more about the history of the 1950s. And today we have another great guest who will share about her life in the 50s. Jackie.
Hello, everyone. Please do cast your eyes to the bottom of the screen and note www.whilethewindmillwatch.com. We would appreciate it if you would go to that site so you can find out a bit more information about these your hosts, who happen to be the authors of that little book that's up in the corner, While the Windmill Watched: A Slice of Rural America in the 1950s. It will also tell you where you could order this book, where the different vendors are, where Janine or I would be signing books, and also the 239 fun chats. This is 240, as Janine mentioned. So we welcome you, and let's get started. Today's guest was born with the urge to create. Priscilla Sage was born in Allentown, Pennsylvania in 1936. At an early age, her parents sent her to an art school in Allentown, a school which was for adults, but that didn't matter. She had been born with an extraordinary gift, and this opportunity encouraged the development of that gift. A lifelong love and involvement with the visual arts fostered by further art classes in New York City, as well as growing up in a Pennsylvania Dutch culture, were also instrumental. So Priscilla graduated from Quakertown High School, Pennsylvania State University, and Drake University. After graduation from Penn State, she taught art in West Orange, New Jersey, while attending Columbia University in New York City. She married Charles Sage, and she moved with him to Iowa, where subsequently she taught art at Ames High School, Drake University, and Iowa State University. The couple has 2 children. Today, Priscilla lives in Green Hills Retirement Community, Ames, Iowa. Priscilla, we welcome you to the 1950s Fun Chat.
Yes.
Thank you.
You're welcome. So before we hear about your journey in the development of visual arts, please tell us how World War II affected your family.
Well, I was a child during World War II, and so because there was a war, there was a war effort, and so as children we collected tin cans and newspapers. And the school I went to, you could take your collections to school and they would weigh them, and then there were assemblies, and we would get ranked. If you brought so many pounds, you got to be a private. I got all the way up to a lieutenant. It was a very exciting thing because I went to an elementary school that was in a large junior high school. So they gave these awards in assembly, and the first graders would sit on the floor, and then the rest of them would sit on the balcony and around the auditorium. Anyway, that was a memory I have of the Second World War. And then, of course, we had Victory Gardens, and there were vacant lots where I grew up. And so Mr. Heimbach, who was my very good friend, he was the age of my grandparents, but Mr. Heimbach and I did a lot together, and he had the field plowed for the Victory Gardens, and the whole neighborhood had a section, and it was actually very social. But he taught me how to make a seed bed, and then all along the edge of the Victory Garden, about 10 inches deep, we had the seed bed, and we grew seedlings, and then he showed me how to transplant annuals. These are all annuals. And so I had a big garden along the edge of the Victory Garden, which I loved. And Mr. Heimbach helped, and he told me how to dig the holes and fertilize them and so on. And I kept a flower garden going from the time I was 9 until I was 13. And it grew into a a business, I guess you'd call it a business. We would deliver flowers to offices in downtown Allentown. My father would drive me around on Saturdays, and we would deliver trays of flowers to various offices.
So how were you inspired to become an entrepreneur then? You had the tools, you had the product. Why all of a sudden?
That's an interesting question. I can't directly answer that. I know there were a lot of doctors that came back after the Second World War, and it was before doctors had clinics, and so they had their own offices. And I think they were friends of my parents, and they said, "Oh, we would like flowers for our office." I didn't say I'm going to be an entrepreneur. And I was able to buy a war bond, or by that time they weren't war bonds, a bond at the end.
Savings bond.
Yeah. And my grandmother and my mother took me to the Philadelphia flower show, which was a spectacular flower show. So I was very interested in that.
Priscilla, did you often visit those offices to bring in fresh flowers at different times of the season?
Yeah, every Saturday I delivered a tray of flowers to their offices. Yep.
Oh, I bet they were so appreciative of that.
Well, they were zinnias and marigolds. They were annuals, and I got the Burpee catalog and ordered my seeds every spring, and it was. And my father made a little beautiful little sign, hand painted with designs on it that we posted at my garden. Priscilla's flowers.
Yeah.
Sweet.
Wonderful.
Yep.
So in what ways did this Pennsylvania Dutch culture help foster your urge to create?
Well, indeed, that's a wonderful question, because the Pennsylvania Germans, people here say Pennsylvania Dutch, but my parents always said Pennsylvania Germans. And, William Penn founded Pennsylvania, and he was a Quaker, and he was a great believer in religious freedom. So he welcomed many different Protestant religions, mostly, of immigrants. And so where I grew up in Pennsylvania, the main groups were Lutherans and Reforms, but there were Moravians and Mennonites of different kinds of Mennonites, Schwenkfelders, Rosicrucians. In Ephrata, there was a commune. It was I grew up with this going on around me, so I didn't think it was unusual. I think that's the way it was. But in reflection, it was interesting. And the Pennsylvania Germans decorated everything. They had beautiful fractors for baptismal certificates and wedding certificates, and they painted their chairs with tulips, and the birds were called distelfinks, and just beautiful designs. They're very, very, very valuable today, of course. But being born into that culture with people who appreciated art and design, and my grandmother went to college and she studied art. She was very artistic. So the people in my family appreciated art, and they were very encouraging to a little girl who liked to build things and collect things. I had boxes of materials that I like to work with, and I was the one that always did the Valentine box. That was for a different era, wasn't it? I don't think they exist anymore for my class. Anyway, in Pennsylvania with my family, and the women all were experts in a fiber form of one or the other, smocking or pulled work or cut work, embroidery, obviously crocheting. My grandmother, after her children were born, quilted. I can remember the quilt frame up in her dining room in the winter. So it was a good good place to be because everybody thought it was wonderful to have a kid. They used to say, Aunt Kate went to Philadelphia. Crazy. They talk about crazy Aunt Kate, and then they'd say, well, she was good in art. And I thought, oh, well, maybe I'm crazy Priscilla. Who knows?
Yeah.
Eccentric.
Eccentric.
Outside the box.
Yeah, right. But my parents sent me to an art school when I was 9, and we learned to oil paint. I learned to set up a palette and turpentine and linseed oil. I can still smell it. And we had canvases, and a group of people, I would say, I don't remember how many, but I'll make up 10, would stand at their easels, and a guest artist would be there every week demonstrating how they painted their pictures. And they said, to get this color, you mix this, and to get this place, you mix that. And so I was part of this adult culture, and I went home every Saturday with a painting that looked like an adult painting, and everybody praised my work. I mean, talk about a turned head for a kid. Anyway, and that went on. I was in that art school for quite a long time. Of course, my philosophy changed dramatically as I went to college and studied art education and my art classes in college. I was told that was copying, and it was. And as an art teacher, I never permitted things. My professor gave me a very terrible critique, and that there's nothing like that to shape you up. And so he said, you have to dig into yourself. You have to have your own original thoughts. Everybody's mind works differently, and yours does too. So you find out what that expression is. And I was able to do that. And that made a big difference. I think that's why my work, hopefully, if you're making art, it should be original. You should not look like other people.
Priscilla, when you were in art school or in that art class, and the professor was showing you how to work with oils, what kind of work did you put on the canvas? Was it just different color palettes and then seeing how they would work together? Was it a nature scene? Was it something else? What went through your mind at that stage?
Well, people were demonstrating how they painted, and I was copying what they were doing. A lot was landscaping. Queenie Stein, however, was an expert in flowers. And Mr. Stark, I remember he went to Maine in the summertime, and so he did a lot of boats in Maine and so on. So I was on my own. I did, though, paint my own ideas, or I would look at a landscape. I think I was always more connected to nature than actually to the human body. I never really enjoyed figurative drawing, but I love natural forms, and my sculpture ultimately reflected that.
Did you look at a certain item, for instance, a seashell, and did that inspire you to paint something on your canvas?
Yes. We went to the shore when I was really small, before gas rationing during the Second World War, and I collected seashells, and I loved that collection of seashells. I remember getting back to my grandparents' house and telling my parents we had to get them out of the trunk. I had to show them to my grandparents and so on. So yes, and I spent I was very nearsighted. One thing that I think really influenced my work was that when I was 2, I had a floating eye, and I started to wear wire rimmed glasses. And fortunately, I had wonderful parents who really took care of me, but they were very worried about this. And in those days, a floating eye meant that you needed to have exercises to focus your eye. And I had these exercises. I spent a lot of my childhood in eye doctors' offices. But when I went to second grade, they patched my good eye, and I really couldn't see out of my other eye. And ultimately, they took me to a doctor in Philadelphia, Dr. Adler. I remember his name because he wrote the book on eyes, and every eye doctor I ever had knew who he was. And he diagnosed my eye as a blind eye, that the optic nerve never developed. So I think I've always been, I've always needed the touchy-feely sort of things for my art. I think that's one reason my sculpture developed.
Sure. Well, your sculptures, moving on into your adult life, and your fabric sculptures, can you tell us about those?
Well, I can start with my fiber things. I was teaching, as you mentioned in your introduction, I was teaching in West Orange, New Jersey, and I thought it would be a good idea for our children to do some fiber things. And so I asked them to please collect materials. And my goodness, this was the late 50s, these station wagons pulled into the loading dock with boxes of fabrics and yarns because their parents and aunts and uncles worked in New York City. And one aunt worked in the hat district, and this child brought in a box of Tuscan straw and beautiful straws and hat findings. It was a treasure. And somebody else had a parent working at Sloan's, which was a big department store in New York City, and they brought fabric samples from the department store. It went on. And so I decided, well, this is great for the kids, but I'm keeping some of this. And so I used some of those materials for my first piece, which my first fiber piece, which was, of course, flat. It was on the wall. And it's in the collection at the Brunier Art Museum here in Ames now. And I called it it was rather a realistic piece, 9th Avenue, because when I took the bus into New York City, I looked down at 9th Avenue, and 9th Avenue at that time had a lot of food stores, and they would have their food out in front of the store, and it was very colorful. And so that idea was what I based that first piece on. And then I went on to do a larger, these are very architectural pieces, and my painting had been very architectural too. So that started my fiber work, and it just evolved. I mean, I worked all the time, and you do one piece and you get an idea for the next piece, and that just evolves. And when I moved to Ames, Iowa, I didn't have children. I didn't have friends. I didn't know where Ames, Iowa was. And so I had given up a job and graduate school. And so I worked all day, and I was happy as could be working all day. And during the 60s, my work evolved. It was mostly stitching and texture and color. And I did a lot of dyeing, because if you dye your fabrics, then you have a wider palette. Then I wasn't really relying on going to stores to find fabrics and colors. And my work originally started to come off the wall. I did pieces where I did 3 frames and had a different something happening on 3 frames, but you could see through. And the back of those were batik. I did batik for the vest, it was silk for the last layer. And then I just got off the wall entirely.
What do you mean? What do you mean when you say you got off the wall entirely?
Well, my work was work that you could hang on the wall. And then it became sculpture. It became 3-dimensional. Yes. And that happened gradually during the 60s. And during the 60s, I was starting to show my work, and I was invited to have exhibits, and I had a exhibit. Well, I had a traveling exhibit actually on the East Coast in the middle 60s, and we had to build wooden crates and send them by railroad express. Does that seem like ancient history?
Yes, yes. So Priscilla, when you oftentimes I think of color, the vibrancy of color, the intensity of color, of perhaps being highlighted in a certain decade. So as your art and you evolved through the decade, did your color palettes change in the work that you did?
I don't really think I was influenced by that. Certainly in the clothes I wore, I was influenced, but I don't think really so much with my artwork, because well, later on when I built sculpture, I mean, I've been doing this for such a long time. I had a process which I can show you. I have some models here.
Okay.
To build a sculpture, a fabric sculpture, I started out doing many, many little models. Now I'm just putting my hand in here and seeing what comes up. Well, here is something. I doubt that I used that. That looks like a Christmas tree. But I would do many of these little paper things. And then I would go through them and I decide what was the best. And then I could throw the rest away. I mean, they're just little paper models, but this is probably one of my favorite parts of building a sculpture, was just building these little models. And then if I thought it was an idea I could pursue, I built full-size paper models of the sculpture that I was hoping to build. And I could then, because it was still paper, if the form wasn't quite right, I could take a scissors and pare it down and work with it. Sure. And then to make sure that my dimensions were right, because by the time you get to cutting fabric for a sculpture, you have to be pretty sure of where you're going. Mm-hmm. And so then the last in that process was to build a fiber model, a white fiber model, so that I used the interior, which was about a 1/4 inch foam core. Was called car headliner. It's what's in the roof of your car. If you look at your car, it's felted on one side. Anyway, then I did lots of experimentation with color. Color was the last thing I did. And the color had to work with the form. And that's why it was the last thing that I did was color. Because you don't want the color to destroy the form. You want it to add to the form. And then I would have patterns, make patterns, and cut my fabric. But it was a long process.
Priscilla, when you cut your fabric, did you find that the works in your sculpture flowed better if the fabric was cut on the bias, or if it was cut on the straight of grain, or did it matter?
It didn't matter, because I was using a silver fabric that was basically the surface was polyester and the back was a polyester, jersey kind of knit. And you cut it, it didn't fray. It was like a piece of paper. Mm-hmm. It served me very well. I'm still using it. How did you
come upon that fabric choice?
Mm-hmm. Well, I collected a lot of fabrics and I experimented. I originally used dispersed dyes, which were for synthetic fabrics. And for that process, I would mix the color of the dye. I mean, I mixed the dye, which was not the real color. And I would paint the dyes on paper and then heat transfer that to the silver fabric. And the color in the paper and the color that transferred were very different. So I had to do a lot of experimentation. So I knew what my colors were going to be like, but the result was really spectacular. Those colors on the metallic fabric were quite exciting. Yeah.
So you did a lot of inventing along the way. And
well, I did. There were not a lot of people using dispersed dyes. I mean, they were used by the industry, obviously, but there weren't a lot of people doing dispersed dyes the way I was doing it at the time.
Mm-hmm.
Then I was starting to get commissions for public spaces. And I finally had one commission, which was so big, I thought, I was a lot younger then. I don't have the stamina to do that ironing. And so I developed a way where I was using acrylic paint and glazing the fabric. And the paint was transparent, so I could overlap it. So if I overlapped a yellow with a red, I would get an orange. And that was exciting. And that worked very well with the sculpture.
Mm-hmm. So can you show us a few things from a book, please?
Yes. Here, thank you. I have this. Well, I'm getting this. Is not the one I want to get, but I'll find the other one. This is.
Okay, can you hold it up a little? There we go. A little, yes.
Even a little higher, please.
Is that okay? I can't see.
Okay,
a
maybe
little
a little higher yet. Yes.
Even more. Mm-hmm.
So they're like, your sculptures are like mobiles, fabric mobiles.
Yes, they move. And so light catches them and so on. That I just showed you, this is the late 90s. I did 27 sculptures that I called Forest Flora. And the idea was that you could walk through them, and if you, touched them a bit, they would move. So I would have this whole forest moving in a space. And I used the same basic form, but I changed the position of it. And I used the same colors for all 27 pieces, but the colors weren't always in the same place. So of course, colors change as you change their position. And that I had a wonderful time doing that. There was a gallery in Miami then that installed those and showed those and showed that installation. And the Brunier Art Museum had they gave me a retrospective, and they installed all 27 pieces, which was very exciting for me. And you look back and you wonder, who was that person? who thought she could do 27 sculptures as an installation?
And of course, there were various sizes of sculptures too, weren't they?
That's right. Yeah, they were. They all found pretty good homes.
Was there, when those sculptures were installed, were there fans also used?
I don't know if Lynette Pullman, who was the director of the Brunier, would have certainly thought of that, but they just moved, there's air in places like that. They just moved naturally by the natural air currents. So they were almost always moving. And of course, in a museum or a gallery, there are people walking through them and they create motion. So no, we didn't need fans to move them. My work just naturally moves. When the heat comes on, it moves around. Yes. Now I'm going to try to show this other piece if we have time.
Okay, can you raise that up a little bit too? Oh, it looks like a beautiful, the skirt of a dress.
Yes, well, it's a spiral form.
Yes.
And it is 12 feet long and 4 feet wide.
Wow.
And I had Iowa passed legislation in 1978 where 0.5% of the cost of a new building went for the purchase of art. And I was the first artist they commissioned under that new legislation to build something. And it was for the Hoover State Office Building, which is right next to the Capitol. And so you have to be a little crazy to do these things. I said, sure, I'll do a sculpture. So, I mean, I had never built a sculpture 12 feet long by 4 feet wide. And this sculpture moves all the time as well. It's in the atrium of the Hoover Building. And when we had it had been up there for 30 years when we had the retrospective. And we went down to the Hoover Building and took it down and sent it to the state conservator. And he cleaned it, and it was in perfect condition. Perfect condition. So that meant a lot to me. That meant my craftsmanship was solid.
Yes. How was it cleaned? Do you remember?
Just vacuumed. It was just the dust does not penetrate the surface is not hard. The pus dust does not penetrate the surface of the sculpture.
Okay. When you were teaching at university level, did you encourage your students to create with fabric sculptures?
Well, I taught various subjects. I mean, I taught color and I taught the dye processes, but I had one class I particularly loved that everybody in the design college could take: architects, landscape architects, and art and design students. And it was called fiber forms. And the purpose of the class was to build a site-specific fiber piece on campus. So each student had to figure out what their site was going to be and what they were going to build. It was a long process. They had to keep, a lot of notes, a lot of drawings, they had to keep a book for the whole semester. But the first thing I did with them at the beginning of the semester was, after I introduced them to the class, I said, okay, I'm giving each of you a white bed sheet. And you take this and I want you to build a three-dimensional form. Sometimes I might have said a container because that would have an interior and exterior. And we're not going to do anything in class on this project. You're going to take it and do it all by yourself. And then in 2 weeks, we'll bring our work back in and we'll see what happened. I said, the only thing that I will concede to, if you run out of material, I'll give you another sheet. They sort of left the class baffled.
I bet.
But their work was extraordinary because they had to scrap inside themselves and come up with original ideas. I wasn't telling them what to do. And they valued that very much. That really set the tone for the semester. It empowered them.
Did you find that some of those students, or you might have seen their work and thought, aha, there is one who has promise, or aha, this one has gotten my ideas?
Yes. That's one of the pleasures of teaching, because you get these unusual and talented students, and and usually with those really talented students, you keep your hands off of them. You let them continue using their own original ideas. And certainly I had students like that. They're always there. That's one of the wonderful things about teaching. And then the other thing is just opening doors, is educating people to appreciate art, which hopefully they will do for the rest of their life.
Sure.
And you gave them the opportunity to think.
That's right. That's what we're about, right? Exactly.
I guess so. So,
go ahead, Priscilla, did you ever create a fabric sculpture that was reminiscent of those beautiful flowers you grew back in next to the Victory Garden?
Oh, yes. I think the forest flora, 27 pieces, were very much, I don't think, oh, this is from my flower garden. And I did write about that forest flora piece. And we have a house in northern Minnesota on a lake and in a forest. And I spent a lot of time crawling around the forest floor, looking at little mosses and little plants and so on, because I was nearsighted. I think that's why I always liked to be, and picking strawberries and blueberries and so on. It's really the basis of those forms and spending time in an environment like that. Now, I didn't say, oh, I'm copying a strawberry plant. It was just the impression that I got by being in that environment.
Did you find that your family members were critical of your works or gave you suggestion of your works or ask you, why are you doing this?
Well, no, my kids both drew a lot. They had a lot of art supplies. So they were, when I worked primarily when they were in school. Mm-hmm. And I didn't work on weekends because that was family time. My husband was very supportive, and he really was one of my best critics. Mm-hmm. I mean, he just died a year ago, but he even with these little collages that I'm doing, he was my best critique. He was my most critical person. He had a great eye. Mm-hmm. And my kids are both great appreciators of art. I mean, neither of my daughter is a musician, and my son was, as a child, a really good artist. But they both have a very deep appreciation of the most avant-garde art. I mean, my daughter and I go to New York to the museums, and she's amazing. She really likes the pieces that some people would have difficulty accepting.
Mm-hmm. So what is the most important value of your art education? Or maybe there are several values.
Well, I was extremely fortunate. I went to Penn State, and I was part of one of the best art education departments in the country. I mean, people came from all over the country to study at Penn State. I didn't know, for graduate school, I didn't know that as an undergraduate, but there was a man named Victor Lowenfeld, and he wrote the book, Creative and Mental Growth. And his philosophy was not that people are making beautiful pictures, but that they make art because of the way their head works. And some people will use many little strokes to make a whole, and other people will take one line and make a whole. And it just so happens I had two children, and one was one way and one was the other. That was great. But Victor Lowenfeld was quite a famous person, and we only had 12 undergraduates, and we had a lot of attention. I got a fabulous education there. And it was the kind of education I could take all the way into working with graduate students, because it was understanding to a certain extent how the brain worked. Now, Victor was from Vienna. He escaped the Nazis during the Second World War, and he was a very big influence on me for the rest of my life.
Wonderful.
Priscilla, you have told a wonderful story about this, your life. It's not just a chapter in your life, it's your life. And how blessed we are to be able to record this and keep it and show it to our viewers. Thank you so much for being a part of our 1950s Fun Chat.
You're welcome. Nice talking to you.
Thank you.
My thanks as well. And viewers out there, please do note the blue subscribe button and the red thumbs up. No, it's the other way around. Anyway, those two colors, blue and red. One's a button, one's a thumb. And subscribe to our channel and tell your friends or even your relatives about this 1950s fun chat. So till next time, toodaloo.